Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 28, 2025 Site Plan Review Committee subgroup meeting for the RiverHouse project. For the record, I'm Daniel Weir. With Commissioner Tony Striner, I'm co-chairing the process, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. I will be holding a hybrid public meeting, which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy adopted on July 7, 2022. And that was recently re-updated, correct? And so as subsequently re-updated by the Commission. Members of the SPRC subgroup for the RiverHouse project are participating both here in person and virtually through electronic means. At this time, I'll orient everyone, if you can't tell, again, I've got a script. I'll orient everyone to our hybrid environment and cover a few specifics about how tonight's meeting will run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the SPRC webpage, the project webpage, the county's events calendar, and the email notification sent to SPRC email subscribers. Additionally, there's a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For subgroup members joining virtually, and I am aware of 4 as of yet, if anyone loses internet connectivity during the meeting, please reconnect with us by phone, and please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon, turning off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference, as well as your video. For our attendees using Teams, please turn off your video feed. I'll address when it is appropriate to turn it on in a moment. The Microsoft Teams meeting chat is active to serve 2 purposes: for SPRC subgroup members who need technical assistance, and for members of the public to add their names to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. The Teams chat should not be used for discussion. Those who were planning to provide public comment will still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period. If subgroup members participating virtually wish to be recognized to speak on an item during the course of the meeting, please turn your video feed on and raise your virtual hand in Teams. We'll be monitoring the video feeds that are on as an indicator of who wishes to speak. And if we have any subgroup members participating by phone, do we have any phone numbers in the chat yet? Okay, if we do see any, I will have a note. I'll come back for this note if anyone comes in by phone. For members of the public who would like to provide feedback and comment, for our members of the public who would like to provide feedback and comment, you'll be called upon to speak at the end of the meeting and will be allotted 2 to 3 minutes to speak on tonight's agenda item. The speaking time allotted will depend on the number of speakers we have at the meeting. If you wish to speak, please enter your name in the meeting chat for virtual attendees, or provide staff with your name if in person, and you will be added to the speakers list. Where is the speakers list presently?
There's a physical paper, and then there's people already signing up online in the chat.
Great, we have people signing up online. Physical list is on the side of the room right now. And we remember that we have 2 different lists that will circulate. One is the attendance list that we keep for the record and use as an opportunity to sign up for any email announcements or alerts about the project. And then the other sign-up sheet is the speaker list. If you want to speak, make sure that you sign up for the speaker list. If you want emails, make sure you sign up for emails. People have signed up for the wrong list before, and we have found out later on that they were expecting to be called on. I imagine that there are people who, and we've had people who get called on to speak and they just wanted to get emails about the program. So a note for your benefit. Last, a reminder that this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act's requirements. Briefly, we'll do intros. We'll have staff and applicant and staff presentations. Discussion topics for tonight include project updates, traffic, off-street parking and loading, community benefits, construction, and PDSP design guidelines. I'll go over again how I like to structure our discussion when we get to it. We'll start with introductions, and then I will hand it off to Mr. Watson for any other organizational comments before we go to the applicant. So Mr. Reb, I'll start with you.
Richard Reb, representing the representative.
Still Daniel Weir from the Planning Commission.
Good evening, Adam Watson with Arlington County Planning.
Robert Gibson, Arlington County DES Transportation.
Joe Trevette, C2E2. My name is Tony Striner. I'm here with the Planning Commission.
Jessica D. with Pentagon Ridge Condo Association.
Godman Schick, representing the RiverHouse Condominium Association.
Chris Fornash with Nelson Nygaard, part of the applicant team.
Kedrick Whitmore with Venable, representing the applicant.
Belle St. John Day with the applicant.
Kateri Garcia, Arlington Ridge Civic Association.
Sohail Hussain, Transportation Commission.
Eric Castle, Crystal City Civic Association.
Jeffrey Williams, Crystal Pentagon Cities Council.
Thank you. We are also joined by Commissioner Peter Robertson. Is there anyone else sitting along the benches who would like to be recognized for any reason? We'll go to our people who are our participants who are online. And I invite you to speak up as you wish to.
Sure. Jim Lantelme, Planning Commission.
Caroline
Pam Van
Haynes,
Hyne.
Forestry and Natural Resource Commission. Sorry, Pam.
Pamela Van Hyne, Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Nick Giacobbe, Aurora Highlands Civic Association.
I have Commissioner Lantelme, Ms. Van Hine, Mr. Jacoby, and Commissioner Hayes. I trusted you. I trusted you. I know Carolyn. I've known Carolyn for a decade, and I trusted you. All joking aside, Mr. Watson, if there are any other organizational matters that you want to cover, then we will go to the applicant. Oh, let me say one more thing. Sorry. And that is that we are advertised until 9 p.m. tonight. I'll be watching the number of speakers and then saying something about when I want to land for public comment as we get closer to the time for discussion.
Terrific. Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. We're excited to bring you a presentation for SPRC number 5 for RiverHouse. So on the next slide here, a quick look at our agenda. I won't walk through each item specifically, but it'll give you a sense of what we're going to talk about here tonight. On the next slide is just our timeline and where we've been. As we've talked about, we've been at this for some time, since the sector plan was adopted more than 3 years ago. And in that time, we visited the LRPC 3 times, and this will be the 5th of the SPRC, along with a public space master planning process as well. So on the next slide, a few changes based upon what we heard at prior meetings. So on the next slide here, first, we heard a desire to straighten the green ribbon at the southwest corner of the site where the townhomes are. Previously, this path had a dog leg in it as you hit that southwest corner of the site that folks thought was a bit confusing and circuitous. That has now been straightened out to allow the green ribbon to go on a direct path through the entirety of the property, running east-west, as you see there on the screen. On the next slide, there's been some discussion of the connection up to Lynn Street at the western edge of the site and request for some more information about studying an alternative, as well as some views. So here you can see what our proposal looks like. We've worked with staff and the community to come up with this proposal. And we think that it's the best way to best possible solution for a number of reasons, principally addressing the difficult topography in the area, providing accessibility and preserving both existing vegetation and a view corridor. On the next slide, you'll see we've added a little depth and a little more detail as to what this area may look and feel like, showing lighting treatments and seating interventions, as well as wayfinding opportunities here. So this, I think, gives a little better sense of what the area is going to look and feel like when it's complete. We also had the request for some views looking down from the top of this connection. So these are shown on the next slide. So this first slide is the view in the what we'll call the final condition, or PDSP condition. And you can see buildings C2 and C3 are visible in this view. I want to reiterate that C2 and C3, while part of the overall PDSP, are not being approved as part of the final site plans before you this evening. They would only go forward in the event of future final site plans On the next slide, you will see the view without C2 and C3. This is the condition that will be, if this project goes forward in what you're considering this evening, this is what would be approved. This would be the view from the top of that spur. So on the next slide here, we did, with some requests, study some alternative access points and methods in this area. And in doing that, we ran into some of the same issues that we'd expected. The first, if we were to implement the spur concept shown here, it would need significant ramping to address the grade, and that would compromise both view corridors and vegetation. It would also require a significant amount of concrete ramping. You can see an example of what that might look like in the bottom left there, with some significant switchbacks to be accessible, not creating the type of environment that we saw on the prior slides. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Fornash to discuss transportation.
Thank you, Ked. On the next slide, we highlight the requirements of the sector plan with respect to transportation very briefly. The unbolded ones are things we discussed last time, specific street reconfigurations and other multimodal elements. Today, we'll be speaking briefly about the bolded items here: parking, TDM, and the transportation management plans, and the results of the multimodal transportation assessment. Next slide. So starting with parking and loading, here you see Land Bay S highlighting two different types of units in Land Bay S. That's standard townhouses and 2/2 stacked flats. The stacked flats have a parking ratio of 1 space per unit, and the townhouses have a parking ratio of 2 spaces per unit, for a total of 204 spaces for 127 units. Also notable, this Land Bay S development is replacing currently 772 surface parking spaces. The next slide, building C1, has a bit more information. I'll start with the locations of loading and parking garage access. That's the blue and yellow arrows. So you'll see they come off the extended 15th road. And then the red arrow indicates where the roll-in entrance is for the bike parking indoor in the garage at grade. So total, there are 42 vehicle parking spaces for 102 units in this building, so a ratio of 0.41 per unit, and 6 additional spaces for visitors, and also 48 indoor at grade, as I said, bike parking spaces, so 0.44 per unit plus visitor space inside. This building replaces 44 surface parking spaces there currently. Last time we heard some concern about where pickup drop-off would occur here, so highlighting next to the red arrow the space on the curb, that's 2 spaces reserved for pickup and drop-off in front of the front entrance of the building on extended Kent Street. Next slide, building N1. This is a larger building of 509 units. There are 512 proposed garage parking spaces on two stories, 2 levels. 265 of those are for units in the building, so that's 0.5 per unit plus required visitor spaces. There are also 32 spaces for the 15,000 square feet of retail in this building, which is proposed to be a health clinic use, so utilizes requirements related to that use. And then an additional 215 spaces to replace existing parking and made available to existing RiverHouse buildings and tenants. I realize I skipped over pointing out where the both vehicle and loading dock entrances are to this building. They're on the left, the blue and yellow arrows, and those entrances are off of a driveway that connects to Big Joy Street at the bottom, page bottom here. And the entrance to the bike room is the red arrow adjacent to the Muse. That is, although it's next to ramps and other grade changes, it's an at-grade roll-in entrance to the bike parking facility, where 204 indoor at-grade bike parking spaces are provided. That's 0.4 per unit, plus there are additional outdoor spaces for visitors. There's also one space in the indoor facility for a retail employee, plus additional visitor spaces outdoors. And again, noting this building is replacing 254 current surface parking spaces. The next slide goes into some detail about the multimodal transportation assessment. Many of you on this committee, I know, are familiar with what an MMTA requires. I'll note here that while we're talking primarily about the full site plan buildings, final site plan buildings that are the subject of SPRC, the MMTA considers the full PDSB. Important to look at the potential traffic and other transportation implications of the full development at this point. So the MMTA looks at, again, access and by all modes to and around the site. In the middle here, just want to go into a little bit of detail so what does the MMTA consider in terms of development? The full PDSP in this case, you start with the base year traffic. That includes, of course, traffic generated by the 1,676 existing residential units, or more appropriately, the people in those units. That we then add in potential traffic generated from newly approved or built projects, as well as other redevelopment included in the sector plan, and general background growth. And then to represent the project itself, all of Land Bay S, all of building C1, as well as potential future buildings C2 and C3, building N1, and potential future buildings N2 and N3. So that's 2,785 new residential units that generate on average about 7.5 person trips per unit. We can go into more detail about that if you'd like. And 570 daily person trips to and from the 19,000 square feet of retail space in the full PDSP. The bottom line at the bottom of the page is because of all the improvement, the site location and all of the improvements to multimodal infrastructure to, through, and around the site, and patterns we see already existing in Pentagon City, Crystal City, nearby neighborhood, traffic impacts on the surrounding streets are anticipated to be modest and able to be mitigated with signal timing changes. Next slide. To add a little bit more detail, the graphic on the right, I'll explain what it shows. In the black arrows, it's the forecast estimated number of vehicle trips in the morning peak hour coming to or from RiverHouse. And so looking at the top right, you see consolidating all the RiverHouse driveways onto Joyce Street. In the section that will be road dieted, it's essentially just under 3 additional vehicles per minute accessing RiverHouse to and from Big Joy Street. Again, reminder, this is for the full PDSP. That's the buildings being proposed today and final site plan, plus all potential future buildings. Moving to the lower right to the southeast corner along relocated Little Joy Street. Talk more about that in just a second. An additional just over 3 vehicles per minute. And then as you see, smaller impacts at the 16th Street and Lynn Street access points to the site. A little more detail about the street improvements and other improvements that are included here where we're talking about the full PDSP. That's the road diet on Big Joy Street that we described last time, the extension of South Kent Street through the site, plus the other on-site streets, the relocation of Little Joy Street to increase the size of Virginia Highlands Park, all the final green ribbon and other walking and rolling paths that we've discussed in previous SPRCs and today, and the Army-Navy Drive Complete Streets project that's currently being built by the county. Now, just to focus in a little bit on the transportation impacts of the final site plans, so just Land Bay S building C1, N1, the analysis is largely the same, except we're, of course, including fewer new future units, 783 to be specific, new residential units still generating around the same average per unit number of trips, and somewhat less trip making related to the retail space because it's only 15,000 square feet. And again, as this won't surprise you, but the traffic impacts of this lower amount of development are anticipated to be even more modest than those from the full PDSP. And the next graphic bears that out. It's the same presentation or the same type of information from the previous slide, but again, just accounting for the final site plans, Land Bay S, building C1, building N1. So you see impacts ranging from 0.1 additional vehicles per minute exiting or entering via 16th, down by 16th Street, up to 1.1 vehicle per minute entering or exiting at Lynn Street. This includes all the transportation improvements that we discussed, except for the relocation of Little Joy Street. The final transportation slide here goes into just a little bit of detail on the transportation management plans, which incorporate the transportation demand management commitments of the development. And you see a fairly standard set of participation and funding and information provision components that will be part of the transportation management plans that are finalized as part of site plan conditions. Back to Ken.
Thank you, Chris. So we wanted to take an opportunity tonight to kind of walk through at a high level the community benefits that are being provided along with these final site plans. I think it's important here to try and talk about the level of benefits being provided. These are the same benefits that are in the county's policies. These are the same benefits that are called for in the Pentagon City Sector Plan. So on the next slide, as we've discussed, we are implementing some very significant pedestrian opportunities with these site plans. This is both on the development sites themselves and also in some off-site areas where we're not building, but we're improving the pedestrian infrastructure. We're providing a significant amount of pedestrian pathway where there's virtually none today, right? This includes both the green ribbon in its final condition and the interim conditions in the other off-site areas, really spanning nearly the entirety of the site. You can see those pedestrian areas here shown on the map. They exceed over 1 mile in total of additional pedestrian network. Again, that's brand new, that doesn't exist today. On the next slide, in addition to these pedestrian paths, the proposed development is providing a significant green network throughout the site. Again, something called for by the county policies, plans, and the sector plan. This totals more than 3 acres of total green area. And as Chris mentioned, right, these are replacing parking lots, impervious surface, asphalt. This is all new. On the next slide, in addition to these pedestrian improvements we talked about, we're making some really significant upgrades to the street network nearby. And the biggest of these is South Joy Street. When you see a typical street improvement in a site plan, the developer is typically obligated to improve the area of the street that corresponds with the frontage of the building. In this case, we're doing far more of the N1 frontage. We're doing about 4 times the length of the frontage of N1 in our South Joy Street improvements. And that equates to more than 3.5 acres of street improvements coming along with these site plans. On the next slide here, you can see a little more information about the various buckets that these improvements fall into. I won't belabor these, but happy to talk about any of them if necessary. But we are very proud of what we're providing, both in terms of base density, bonus density, and the Green Building Incentive Program. So with that, I will turn it over to Belle to talk a little bit about phasing.
Thank you. The next few slides illustrate how the site's improvements shaped by the community benefits and enhancements just described by KED come to life through phased implementation. So on this first diagram, we can see the complete physical build out of the RiverHouse neighborhood, showing open spaces, roadway improvements, and the full green ribbon network. The next slide, we start moving through each of the phases and begin at the South Land Bay. As shown in orange, 15th Road, Kent Street, and the Loop Road are fully built. Key green spaces are also delivered, including the secondary green ribbon alignments along Kent Street and 15th Road, plus the primary green ribbon to the 15th Street spur from Kent Street. Next slide. With the N1 building, we see the full South Joyce roadway improvements, along with an interim N1 open space to accommodate the secondary green ribbon pathway to West Post from South Lynn. A new ADA access is created to connect the existing pathway to Army Navy Drive. Next slide. Final improvements include the completion of the N1 and 2 open space, the remaining green ribbon links, and the realignment of Little Joyce to expand Virginia Highlands Park. I will now turn it back over to Ken.
Thanks, Belle. Just to wrap up here with a little information on our construction schedule. As the next slide shows, we anticipate approval of Land Bay S, Building C1, and Building N1 here in 2025. The Land Bay S project is anticipated to go first, some point in 2026, followed closely by Building C1 and N1 the following year. We anticipate all these projects will take approximately 24 months to complete. And I want to close this out just by saying that, you know, this process, the commission processes and the board process is not the end here. There's going to be a significant level of coordination from the applicant with the county and the community going forward throughout the finalization of the design and the permitting process. And part of our obligations in the site plan conditions are to have a community liaison to make sure that folks always have somebody that they can contact and get in touch with the development team to ensure that we're remaining open and have a discussion and dialogue throughout this process. So with that, I'll close it. Thank you for your time, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you very much. Let me get the presentation. Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Adam Watson with the Arlington County Planning Department, and tonight I'm going to talk about our process and our next steps. I'll pass it over to Rob Gibson to talk about traffic. We'll talk about our off-street parking and loading, community benefits, and construction as well. So I just want to start out by saying thank you to everybody who's participated in this planning process. It's been a long one. We started back in August of 2023, and we're here this evening for our final SPRC meeting. I also want to say thank you to the folks who participated in our public space master planning process. We had over 800 comments received on that. So we really appreciate the feedback and the input on that. Please stay tuned. We'll have more outreach and engagement on that regardless. We may have another round of survey on that depending on the conclusion we draw after we have an opportunity to thoroughly review all of these 800 comments. But at minimum, reaching back out to those participants, reaching back out to this SPRC to let them know how that park design evolves as it's headed towards the commission hearings and the county board. And so also just wanted to echo what Ked said a minute ago. We've had 13, including tonight, county-led engagements since July 23. We've talked about all of the topics listed in blue on the side of the screen, many of them on more than one occasion. And also to echo what Kedrick said, this isn't the end. We're going to be working closely with the applicant to make revisions to the 4.1 plan set and to the MMTA and to the PDSP design guidelines and all the other documents that are required to be submitted with this before we go to the commissions that are listed here in the county board. So there's still a much more opportunity for public comment and feedback at Transportation Commission, Planning Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, Housing Commission, and we'll eventually go to the county board. In addition to that, I just also wanted to say that JBG Smith may in the future be submitting final site plans for any number of these 4 buildings that would come in the future, right, for C2, C3, N2, or N3. And when that happens, we will be back here at SPRC to talk about those buildings and to talk about that side area and how it fits into the overall PDSP. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Rob Gibson.
Good evening, everybody. We've had a fair number of questions about transportation and planning throughout this process. I think it's important to reground everybody in the fact that Arlington County doesn't just look at transportation and land use at the site plan level. In fact, we start by coordinating with our regional partners in COG. There's a regional transportation model, and that is associated with a regional forecast for population and growth over time. So that provides a really high-level transportation model. Then we go down into the county's transportation and planning levels. So we have the general land use plan and our master transportation plan are coordinated, and that provides sort of our top-level county planning guidance. And then the next level below that is typically our sector plans and small area plans. So for this site, the Pentagon City sector plan was approved. It included the development plans that we see today. In association with that planning effort, there was the Pentagon City phase development site plan transportation analysis. And that analysis took into account the overall development forecasts and projections for the sector plan. And now what we're seeing is the most granular level of transportation study. It is a multimodal transportation study. And when we say that, we talk about ensuring that we're looking at services not just for automobiles and level of service there, but also pedestrians, bikes, and transit users. And so we have the 4.1 site plan application, which is the planning documents there, the MMTA, and as we work through these from top to bottom, the granularity of the detail gets increased. So at this level is where you look at things like sidewalk widths and that. Where at the regional level, you may be looking at performance of 395 and the bridge networks. And so it's all planned, it's all at different levels. And we are here today to ensure that this project is consistent with the planning level above it, and that the details going forward are supportive of the overall development, both in the PDSP and the final site plans. And one thing that Arlington does that most jurisdictions don't do is we invest in a pretty significant amount of building level transportation studies. After buildings are built, we go back in and we look at the performance of those buildings to see if, just to see what's going on. And that helps provide a feedback loop for us and the community, so that when you look at things like our estimates for transit use or things like that, we have that ground truth by studies of built projects. And that helps us with future MMTA analysis. And so just wanted to provide that background on how this all fits together, and I hope it's helpful. Now going into some of the details that Chris mentioned about the overall PDSP study. If you dared to dive into the many pages of the MMTA, you'll come across a very number-rich chart, and that is the trip generation estimates for the project. These trip generation estimates utilize national standards for how many trips people take in each housing type. And then they incorporate Arlington County data on how many people may use cars, how many people may bike, and how many people may walk. And so in this table, it breaks it down for all of the different land uses. And all of the different land uses and numbers that you see on the far left-hand side are incorporated into their model and their analysis for levels of service. And so this sort of shows the math, but it also shows that the PDSP is thinking of all the different build out at a 2035 horizon. And then with the phase one development, what you see is that there's going to be in the high-rise development, that's principally the existing RiverHouse homes. And then we have the mid-rise, which are the land-based C and N1, and then we have the townhouses, which we see there, and then some trips associated with the clinic uses. But overall, when you factor out all the people that would walk, bike, and take transit, the first phase of development is estimated to add about 125 or so 100 new trips to the network. That's spread out across all of the different driveway points and the different roadway connections that are proposed. And overall, when we look at the results of the MMTA, where the county still has some details that we're working through with the applicant, and I think we've heard some from the community about how Big Joyce should function for access to the grocery store and things like that. We're still working on those details, but generally speaking, we find that the transportation network as proposed and envisioned in the planning processes can support the proposed development in the RiverHouse project. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Adam for parking.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. All right. Moving on to off-street parking and loading. So I'm going to start big and get more granular here, but I'll start with talking about overall parking policy and regulations. So the sector plan recommends that we create a pedestrian-oriented district, one where people are walking and biking and using micromobility and transit as the predominant means of travel. So that's the sector plan guidance on a 30,000 foot level. When we drill down a little bit more, we also have some supplemental policy, our off-street parking guidelines, and it makes site-specific recommendations for how low or what the minimum should be for off-street parking, right? And so for this particular site, that recommendation is 0.4 spaces per unit for market rate units, Now, if it's a committed affordable unit at the 60% AMI level, it's 0.28. If you go lower than that at like the 50% level, it's 0.2. But the big number to keep in mind is 0.4 spaces per dwelling unit. In addition to that, when a development is using these off-street guidelines to request a zoning modification to reduce parking, we also ask that developers provide 5% of the first 200 units as, excuse me, 5% of visitor spaces for the first 200 units of a building for visitor parking. So that's, usually 10 spaces for a building, for a mid-rise multifamily building. In terms of the zoning ordinance, there's additional regulations. We limit the number of compact parking spaces that a project could have at 15%. Although if there's some excess of that, sometimes we just don't count that towards the zoning requirement. In addition, they could have tandem spaces, which are approvable, but again, we don't count those towards off-street parking because they don't meet the dimensional requirements in the zoning ordinance for having a drive aisle and so on and so forth. And then lastly is just to say what I think I already said above, which is that the county board can consider reducing these parking requirements by zoning modification, as long as it's consistent with the sector plan and consistent with the off-street parking guidelines. And so in terms of overall off-street parking, the PDSP is looking at a total residential parking ratio across the entire site of 0.45 spaces per dwelling unit. And this is assuming that future buildings C2, C3, N2, and 3 would have a ratio of about 0.4 spaces per dwelling unit. Obviously, we would be looking at that much closer at the time of a final site plan filing, just to find out what the actual proposed parking ratio is. But making that assumption, you get to a 0.5 spaces per dwelling unit, which again is consistent with the number that I was just sharing with you on the previous slide. The rest of this is really just for reference. Come back if we need to speak about it more tonight. I think the applicant's presentation covered it well also. So just briefly, the existing buildings would have a 0.46 spaces per dwelling unit ratio. There's a very small amount of existing retail in the James building. They don't even require parking for that. It's very small, under 2,000 square feet. Townhouses at a 1.61 ratio, as Chris mentioned earlier. N1 building would have a 0.52 spaces per dwelling unit residential ratio, and then 1 space per 462 square feet for the retail. And then C1, which is residential only, also at a 0.41. Some things that we're going to need to keep working with the applicant on include the N1 compact ratio. As I just mentioned, we want to keep that at 15%. So just working with them to see perhaps there's excess parking in the N1 building that's not being counted for zoning purposes, but will exist for those to use. And then also thinking about visitor parking for the existing buildings being accommodated within the existing surface spaces to remain there, since those buildings are using the off-street parking guidelines to have a ratio that's lower than what it is today. The last, this is not the last thing. One last thing about parking, though, is we do have a residential permit parking program. It's really hard to make out on this map, but the neighborhood to the south here has a variety of residential only permit parking zones. And so the point here is just that the site plan development is not eligible for RPP parking. So this should help mitigate concerns about folks who are going to be living in RiverHouse future development parking on streets to the south. So just want to share that. Happy to answer more questions if folks have them about the RPP. Last thing is the off-street loading. I'm not going to bore everybody with the zoning calculations for how you get there, but I'll just say that for the existing buildings, the applicant is asking for a modification to have 2 loading spaces for each of those buildings. I think staff supports that. That's less than they would otherwise be required to have, but we also know these buildings have existed for a very long time, and we think that they will be able to function fine with 2 spaces proposed. For N1, it would be 3 residential loading spaces and then 1 loading space for the retail. They're actually providing more than that. So there'd be 3 for residential and then 2 for the VHC health that's coming in on the ground floor of N1. And then lastly, 1 loading space for off-street loading space for the C1 building. This isn't required for townhouses. This is just for the multifamily buildings with mixed use on the ground floor. I'm going to jump into community benefits here and just provide you an overall breakdown of how staff looks at how the density is being earned here. And so there's different, it looks a little bit washed out on the main screen here, I apologize, but the blue is your base density, right? So this is 72 units per acre base density. We get that from the sector plan, from the zoning ordinance. And there's a whole number of things here listed that the developer has to do regardless of whether or not they're asking for additional density. So new sidewalks and curb and gutter, new streets and streetscapes, all utility improvements, in this case, LEED Gold certification for C1 and for the townhouses, the two areas that are not participating in the Green Building Incentive program. Our base affordable housing contribution, public art, it's either a contribution or it can be done on site, utility fund undergrounding contribution, TDM program, and our in-building wireless for first responders. So that's just, again, for baseline level of density. There's two additional buckets for the additional density, or the quote unquote bonus density that they were requesting. And these, the orange and the green, are what we refer to as the community benefits. So the orange are the things that are explicitly identified in the sector plan as being community benefits. That includes expansion of VHP through land dedication, the realignment of Joyce Street, creation of the green ribbon throughout the site, creation of additional public space, totaling is 2.5 acres, the protected bike facility that the applicant just mentioned in their presentation along Joyce Street, and then at least 10% of net new units as committed affordable housing units on site. The green is the green building incentive policy. The only building participating in that is the N1 building, but they are going to be doing it at the 0.25 FAR level. That equates to 51 units. And they'll be doing the automatic update requirements of the 2023 policy. So that would mean, in this case, upping to 24% energy optimization over the baseline, doing LEED Gold, as well as everything else that's listed here, and happy to come back to that if there are questions about what the automatic update of the GBIP includes. So that gets you to the total. This of 4,461 units. That includes existing units that are on site today to remain. I'm just going to break this down a little bit further. So these are the community benefits, again, getting into the orange and the green bubbles. So the initial phases that we're talking about coming in, the townhouses, N1 and C1, we're looking at having on-site affordable housing with a preference towards family-sized units. The interim N1, N2 public space and construction and maintenance of that. A whole number of green ribbon segments, including interim segments, as I'll show on the next slide. The separated bikeway that the applicant showed in their presentation, and then also, again, the GBIP at the 0.25 FAR level. So this is my attempt to create a graphic that looks as nice as the applicant's. I don't know that I succeeded, so we might need to use the applicant's better looking graphics for our discussion this evening. But this captures essentially the physical improvements in terms of the green ribbon, the public spaces, and the bikeway that would come with the initial phases. So just walking down the key here, the dark green box is the N1 into public space between those two buildings, which would be, of course, expanded later in the final phase. The thicker green arrow, that's the green ribbon with in its final state or final treatment. The lighter green that's dashed, that's the interim treatment or pathway that we're going to have to connect you from Kent down to existing VHP and back. And then in gold, the bikeway, separated bikeway on Joyce Street. In terms of our future phase buildings, so N2, C2, C3, and N3, and those I think were generally the order in which those were contemplated to come in. We'd be looking at potentially more affordable housing on site. The final iteration of that N1 into public space was expanded to be about an acre. The final green ribbon segments, the big one being that primary segment between C2 and C3 building that itself would be about an acre overall in terms of space, as well as a secondary path between the N1 and N2 space that connects you up to Army Navy Drive. The VHP expansion and that fee dedication, as well as the realignment of South Joyce Street to make Virginia Highlands Park one contiguous park space, And then lastly, the far north public space, I think it's labeled as James Park on a number of diagrams. That's on the far north of the site, north of the James building itself, with a fee dedication as well. And then a planning process for that that would occur sometime in the future. I want to talk a little bit about construction. This slide has a lot of information on it. Also happy to come back to this, but these are the construction related site plan requirements for each final site plan that have to be done prior to demo or land disturbance permit issuance and or throughout the duration of construction. And I just want to note that these are conditions in the site plan ordinance that are construction related, that go above and beyond what's just in the county code, what's in the statewide building code and federal laws that obviously must be complied with as well. So in terms of maintenance of traffic, the condition sets limits on the hours that construction can occur in the public right of way, and that's limited to 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and or 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekends and holidays. They also need to maintain a 5-foot minimum clear width along existing streets for pedestrians to use. The construction hauling route plan will be coordinated with the civic associations as well as our zoning administrator and the police department. And then maps of that will also be posted inside of the construction trailer. In terms of on-site construction activity, the hours are limited to 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays, and then 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends and holidays. Off-street parking plan is required for the construction workers as well. That's also submitted to the zoning administrator. We also encourage them to provide a subsidy for public transit and or van pooling to get folks to the job site in the morning. Probably most important to people here in the room is the community outreach portion of that. So the developer is obligated to provide a community liaison throughout the duration of construction. They have to provide that contact information to the civic associations and all of the abutting condominiums. That person needs to be available to answer questions related to construction. In addition to that, they were required to hold a community meeting prior to starting any demo or clearing of the site with all of the abutting property owners. And then in that meeting, they're going to review the hauling route plan, the location of the construction, where the workers are going to park, if they're parking there, plan for temporary pedestrian and vehicle circulation, temporary lighting plan, and as well as the overall hours and schedule for construction. So they have to also notify the civic associations and abutting property owners within 7 days of any non-emergency street or traffic lane closures. And then lastly, throughout construction, have to keep neighbors apprised of any kind of utility work that's occurring on abutting streets or on site that could affect levels of service or access. So with that, these are our discussion topics for this evening. The only one that I wanted to call special attention to is the PDSP design guidelines. We don't have any specific materials to present on that this evening, but we did want to open it up to the floor if folks do have comments or questions about that. That document is essentially a bridge between the 4.1 plans and the PDSP itself and then the sector plan. It's really meant for the future phases that come in. It's kind of like more of a narrative format of the information that's already in the 4.1 PDSP record. So if there's any comments at all about that, we just want to make sure we capture those, as the applicant will be taking those back to finish their work in terms of updating those PDSP design guidelines as well. Otherwise, we have project updates, traffic, off-street parking and loading, community benefits, and construction on the discussion agenda. And Mr. Chair, that concludes staff's presentation. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So we have just shy of an hour for our discussion before we are going to be accommodating our public speakers. So as a refresher, the way that I like to do this is to begin by asking, going around the table and asking clarifying questions, which are factual or informational. I will, if I don't see someone coming to a question, I will invite you to do so. I'm going to go first, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Reb, and then I'm going to go clockwise from there. Actually, Mr. Reb, with your indulgence, are you still having a quorum issue? So I'm going to go to Mr. Trivedi first, and then I'll ask, and then I'll go to you, and then, well, then we might as well just go counterclockwise after that. But Commissioner Trivedi.
Thank you. I'll be quick. So for the EV charging spaces, I see for N1, you're going for the additional density, which you're doing the 4% EV parking and 15% EV ready. I didn't see from looking at the documents what the ratio would be for the rest of the buildings or the full PDSP or the full site plan. So I was wondering what exactly that was going to be for every other building.
For those who are
Great.
okay, Mr. Whitley.
Thanks. Had a second there. A couple questions in there. Thank you for the question. You correctly identified what we're doing for the N1 building. For the future PDSP buildings, the future site plans, we don't know yet. We haven't designed or committed to anything related to those. And then because we're not participating in the program with respect to Land Bay S or Building C1, we are not providing the chargers there.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. I think this might be for Mr. Watson, but Mr. Fornash, if you, excuse me, for Mr. Gibson, but Mr. Fornash, you may want to chime in as well. When doing the MMTA, what is the, and you may have answered this, but I want to ask you to speak a little bit more in depth to it. What is the source of the coefficients that are used for the different modes to arrive at the number of trips, and how frequently and how are they audited or updated or matched for appropriateness to the kind of grid and environment that we have in Arlington County?
So I'm going to let the applicant speak to the first part, which is going to be about general ITE trip generation process.
Yeah, so Rob used one of our many favorite acronyms, ITE, the Institute for Transportation Engineers. It's a professional organization. One of the many things they do is publish. I just actually dug mine out the other day out of storage for obscure reasons, multi-volumes of trip generation rates by development type, by context. So they take it to an almost infinite granularity on use. Of interest to us here is they have rates that they publish that are, again, taken from accumulated professional experience, rates by the type of residential construction or density, if you will, high-rise, mid-rise, low-rise, townhouse, single-family, et cetera, and by the urban context, so a proxy for how multimodal the area might be. So that's where when I offered the number of 7.5 average person trips per unit for the residential, that's a summary across those various categories that are represented in the development proposal here and in the existing RiverHouse. And I think Rob was going to speak to then the mode split part.
So a couple other points on that is that ITE has recently sort of changed some of their work. Historically, when I started out in this business, they only did car trips. So they'd go out and they'd look at a development and a parking lot, and they'd count the cars coming and going from that parking lot, and then they'd look at the building that's associated with, and they'd say, this is the rate. And then they do that for, depending on the land use, a handful of land uses to many land uses across the country to come up with countrywide averages. Only the cars. In the last decade, ITE has really started to provide more guidance for places like us. And so they are now doing multimodal person trip generation data collection and estimates. Relatively small sample sizes, but it's the best information we have. And Arlington County and the District of Columbia have been participating in providing data and supporting ITE's generation of these estimates. One of the things that Arlington County really found was that ITE might be grid on a person trip basis, or a car basis. They used cars and then they said how many people were in them and you can get person trips. But they didn't do anything about multimodal trips. So if you're in an area like Arlington where you've got a lot of metro, you got buses, you got biking access, you've got a rich network of walkable places. So your grocery stores, your convenience stores, your shopping centers, your healthcare, all that. It just didn't do mode split. So we worked. We've counted data at getting back to that local level, building level information. So we've looked at the number of trips generated in Arlington projects around different places, and come up with more, we think, more accurate estimates. I do think that one other thing that we should just caveat this with, it, this is a tool to help us make decisions. It is not a crystal ball on how many left turns are going to happen in 2029 at one particular intersection down to the single vehicle. It'll get us pretty close, but it's a tool, and we haven't, when we did the 22202 data collection and transportation analysis, what I actually found was we found that the development trends were not the national average, where if you just built stuff, you just have cars, a linear generation of cars. Arlington County broke that curve in the sense that we created walkable, livable spaces with connectivity and transit. That has created a community that is not dependent on cars, and as such doesn't need 50 lanes of cars on let's say Joyce Street. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rep.
So I assume we're going to have 2 rounds, or is this only 1 round?
We'll do questions and then we'll go back around for comments. And
Oh,
feedback.
okay. Well, then I have a lot of questions then. Okay. So first on traffic, as I was trying to understand that, my sense is you have ratios or numbers of trips per dwelling unit type. And then there was a specific study in this area of traffic in 2023. Is that correct?
Study or data collection? There were
Data collection.
Data collection.
Trips.
Yes.
There were, we saw them, the counters on the streets, et cetera.
Well, the applicant counted the traffic volumes on the local roadways to get the peak hour numbers. I would also say that there's a lot of different data collection going on. You may have seen something associated with this. You may have seen something associated with a different development project, but also VDOT and the county are also collecting data.
Okay. So my question has to do with 2023 is somehow a baseline in this, correct?
That's right.
And my concern is that 2023 was a year we were still.
Mr. Rep, I'm going to invite you to hold concerns. Like, I really just want to get questions and answers for this first round, and then for concerns,
I'm getting to the question, which is 2023 is a baseline. If I look out at 395 out my window, the traffic volume has increased significantly from 2023 to
Mr. Rep,
2025.
are you coming to a question?
Yes.
Thank you.
So how sensitive is your model to the baseline study? Because traffic has increased in the DC area since 2023. That's my first question. The second is, one of the streets that you look at is Kent Street. And how have you taken into consideration that traffic on Kent Street, although it's two-way, is essentially one car at a time? Because there's traffic on both sides. 2 vehicles can't go. You have to find an area to pull over and wait for the other car to pass. So that's my second question. Third is Metro. There's a lot of development in Pentagon City. How does this, if multimodal transportation, add to the ability of Pentagon City Metro Center to handle all the capacity? And what does this put it at if you're relying on that as part of your traffic? For community benefits, pedestrian.
I'm going to invite Mr. Fornash and Mr. Gibson to answer the transportation questions, and then I'll come back to you for community benefits questions.
I think the first question was, how sensitive is the model to the choice of a base year? Your observation that traffic in some ways has, or in some places has increased. We have 2024 estimated counts from VDOT that VDOT produces on an annual basis. Those show not much of an increase in traffic on the surrounding streets. I think you referenced Interstate 395. I haven't looked to see what counts are different there. But it's you know, is it sensitive to the base year? Yes. Is it sensitive in a way that's going to change the conclusions of the analysis? It's not. Your second question was about Kent Street and how you approach Kent Street, given that it functions as a yield street, is what we call it in the street design and transportation world, where there's not often space for two cars to be going at any particular speed past each other. The volumes on Kent Street now are very low, and the volumes forecast with the RiverHouse redevelopment, RiverHouse neighborhood, are very low, and we don't foresee any challenges with the specific operation of Kent Street. It's certainly no need to do anything to change the operation of Kent Street. And your third question, I think, was about Metro. It's certainly true that this development and all the other proposed redevelopment and new development in Pentagon City will add Metro riders. I think that's a welcome thing because it's also adding people walking to and from Metro. The Metro volumes at Pentagon City are significantly lower than they were at the peak of Metro usage pre-pandemic, although thankfully it's rising. So I certainly don't think there's any challenge with Metro capacity on the blue and yellow lines at Pentagon City and through the network. I hope those answered your questions.
And on the Kent Street issue, I do want to clarify the project is widening Kent Street along all of the new townhouses. And then we continue to discuss with the applicant the street width from just leading up to it, sort of through that existing curve on Kent.
Yeah, I'm interested in the neighborhood behind that. The single family housing, 16th and 17th in Kent Street. That's where you can only drive one car at a time.
Yeah, and I think the transportation study has shown that there's very marginal trip generation to use those streets. Now that wouldn't warrant additional street widening.
Did you want to go to your community benefits questions?
Sure, just a couple of quick ones. One is, I understand in the Pentagon City sector plan, the green ribbon being a community benefit for the mall area, which is all buildings. RiverHouse today has walkways that are very green with grass and trees. So I guess I just don't understand why the green ribbon is a public benefit here rather than just a regulatory requirement of building it in a particular way. On the expansion of Joyce, the trees, I think they're in Joyce today, are coming down. So what is the plan to replace the trees that are being lost on Joyce? On the James Park, why can't that be phase one, a dedication, and then the county can allow it go back to JPG to use the pool until it's finally done, but get the fee dedication now?
Yeah, I'll start by saying the sector plan explicitly identifies the creation of the Green Ribbon Network as a community benefit. And so, I mean, your question really goes back to one of the sector planning process. So we're just here to implement. This idea stems back from the idea of having eco corridors, which was in the Livability 22202 framework, and that obviously evolved into what sector plan is now calling the Green Ribbon. So again, that's just county board adopted policy that we're implementing there, and that's the reason why it's being counted in that bucket of additional density. With regard to the street trees, I'm going to try to take a stab at this, and then I might let the developer or someone else chime in. I think there are trees in the median. Is that what you're referring to? Right. So there's going to be, then those trees would be removed, and then you would have new trees planted along that entire stretch. And if that isn't full enough answer, we'll come back to that. And the last thing I see, and then the last thing, James Park, the county would not want that dedicated in fee until such time as we're ready to undertake a planning process for that to actually make it into a park, so that the folks who live in the James building would be able to still use the swimming pool up until the point in time when we're ready to take on that planning process and that space is ready to be sort of the pool removed and then graded again so it can be planned for a public space, which again, we think would occur concurrently with the filing for that future N2 building next to N1. So at that point in time, we'll be looking at getting the fee dedication as well as doing the planning for that area. And Rob, I'll turn it over to you on the trees.
Actually, I'm going to speak to the paths and public access for open space. So one of the big things that I think is easy to forget, while they don't have a gate around the entire RiverHouse property, it is private property. And you don't have any rights there until we get easements for the public to be there. And that's what we're doing as part of this process in association with these green open spaces is public access.
Thank you. Mr. Williams is going to go to you. And thank you, Mr. Reb.
So if we're trying to do one round, I've got a couple questions on different items. So
I think I'll take the same template that Mr. Reb and I just settled on. Why don't you start with
first
question? We'll go item by item.
Is traffic. And this can confirm, I did actually review the MMTA appendices and the data. And so what I wanted to confirm is that in figure 59, which is on page 113 of the MMTR, it does show, that's the RiverHouse driveway 1 into Harris Teeter. You do have a left-hand turn lane, a through lane, and a right-hand turn lane southbound. I was just going to say the other, and I guess you have not had a chance to go back and review this, there are other diagrams that are in the submittals that are still showing just the one through lane. So please just confirm that that intersection is going to be delivered as shown in that figure 59.
This is not at all intended to be a gotcha, but can I confirm which version you were looking at? Because I'm not sure when the county posted the one that we.
If you send me the question exactly, I will get you a detailed response.
Okay. Fine. I think you've redone the driveway, but some of the other exhibits aren't showing it. Okay, the other question has to do with kind of parking, and this is more kind of my understanding. In reviewing some of the documents, I saw that we kind of had a previous parking ratio of like 0.52 to 0.60 for existing RiverHouse. I think the different buildings had actually different ratios in a prior submittal, but this was in the county, I think, document. It says it's outdated. And then the new one shows 0.4 site-wide at full build-out. And I say, okay, I kind of get that. What I kind of like to know is what is the current parking ratio that's actually being used by the current residents? Does JBG have the information about how many residents per dwelling unit are there at the current status? So I can gauge what 0.4 looks like compared to where it's currently parked.
I was going to say, well, we talk about the specific number because this is a by right project currently. It's not tracked in the same way with a parking ratio as we would in the site plan, but so the current utilization is about 0.58 and trending downward.
Okay.
So that's your baseline when looking at this.
So that means that when we get the full PDSP, it's probably going to be a reduction in parking for kind of all the residents, modest. But
the full PDSP is hard to project, right? When we get to that level. So I'm hesitant to put a number on that at this point.
So
Mr. Williams and others at the table, I just want to keep people aware, in tune with time, right? We've got about 35 minutes before we need to go to public comment, and I want to go around the table again for comments.
I'll close out.
Thank you.
I just want to know where we were now and where we're going to be.
Couple questions. One is for the townhouses, is there going to be any parking on those streets right next to the townhouses? Or will there be is there any room for parking there?
Do you guys want to take this? I mean, the answer is in certain areas, there will be on-street parking, but it's going to be public parking. Go ahead.
Yeah, so around the townhouses on 15th Road and Kent, there is no on-street parking. On the what will likely be 15th Court, which is the U-shaped around the back, there is on-street parking on one side of the street for most of the street.
Okay. And then on N1, there was no PUDO lanes or anything about PUDO. And could you talk about that?
Yeah, we talked about that some at the last SPRC, along with the detailed design of the rebuilt Big Joy Street, the road diet. So there will be, or at least the anticipation is part of the curb use, there will be spaces reserved for pickup drop off, particularly in front of the health clinic, although there's ample parking in the garage, but potentially also in further curb sections. That's sort of a programming issue, right? We're making sure that the design accommodates parking spaces, and whether those are longer term parking spaces or pickup drop off is a signage and management issue. And typically the county takes the lead on public streets on deciding that.
So it'll be on main, Big
It'll be on
Joyce?
Correct. Right in front of the building.
And just for the record, to clarify, because I've done this many times in this room and been chastised by board members about it, PUDO, pickup and drop off areas.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Commissioner Hussain.
Thanks. I have, I guess, one question at the moment. There's a figure in the MMTA about bicycle level of comfort, and I think one of the, I'm just curious. There's one of the like gauges is not comfortable is like the red. What does that mean? Like, what is the like? How do you gauge what not comfortable means?
I think it is gauged in the document that you're looking at. Normally, we have a table that shows different levels and what contributes to it. I would say that not comfortable is like a shared roadway with busy cars. It actually, generally speaking, a neighborhood street, low volumes, you might be able to have a mid-level of comfort to ride on that street. But once you get above about 1,500 vehicles a day, it gets increasingly more difficult to have a shared space with cars.
Can I ask about the road diets on Joe Street? Is that okay? I just really quickly, like when you say road diets, what are the actual like implementable strategies you guys are thinking about to actually achieve that road diet on Joy Street?
Sure, and I'll very briefly recap because that was in last SPRC's materials. It's essentially taking what's currently 2 through travel lanes in each direction, separated by a raised median in most sections, although with turn lanes cutting into that, of course, and replacing it with primarily 1 through travel lane in each direction, also accommodating turn lanes for, to make sure throughput still holds, but thereby limiting crossing distances. And in some points where there's not on-street parking, you pull the curb out even further, making it possible to have mid-block crossings in a safe way that's really not as safe feeling today.
And the principal benefit of that, beyond making shorter crossing distances, is to provide room to accommodate a bi-directional cycle track adjacent to the project. And I think that if this was any other site plan, we might see site-specific improvements in front of N1, and that would be it. Because of that cycle track, it's been a high priority for the county to get the improvements from Army Navy to the park.
Ms. Garcia.
Awesome, thank you. I have, I think, two main kind of questions. So I know Richard asked this question earlier, how, or related to Kent Street, I would like to understand a little bit better how you forecast the traffic on a non-existing street, right? So that street right now does not go through at all. And I guess I kind of find it hard to believe that you have, if I look at slide 17 of the applicant presentation, it has, 293 cars going one way, 47 another way. This is in the full build out. 297 going there, and then 31 down Kent Street. I find that highly unlikely considering that you also have connections to Alexandria. And so I just am curious if you can explain a little bit how you calculated that, knowing that area. And I think for the county, we really need to pay attention to that because you have no stop signs in all the areas. You don't have sidewalks. Just kind of curious.
Right. So one step in that is looking at how current users of RiverHouse, residents and visitors, distribute themselves in terms of leaving the site or accessing the site. Right. So we look at those percentages as representative of one kind of behavior of the future RiverHouse, because those units will still exist. And then in conversation with the county as part of the scoping process, thinking about what the likely places where people will be driving to are from this site or driving from to the site in the future, right? How will that change, right? And so in general, if people are heading to Alexandria, what we see in current data is that they're going out to Route 1 and not primarily in the neighborhood, right? So try to reflect that grounding and the reality of the data collection that we did over the last couple of years. That's the short version of the answer. I'm not sure how satisfying it is. I'm happy to have more conversation about it. Rob?
Not very.
No, but I think that the existing traffic is really important to understand. It does provide a baseline. There's currently a very large number of parking spaces that are accessible to the neighborhood from Kent, or to Kent. There's an existing driveway. You can get into the neighborhood on Kent. And so that helps us understand what existing residents' choices are. And then the other parts that I think are a little bit more opaque in the applicant's analysis are that you only have the driveways for the townhouses and C1 that are principally accessed off of Kent and 15th Road. You don't really have all of the other units to the north that are going to be accessing that little area of the site and our public network.
All right, I will have a comment on that later. This is my foreshadowing.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
My next question was on the benefits. You talk about the green ribbon connections, right, as being benefits. I would like a little bit more of a description of what happens over by those Hume stairs. I'm not clear what that connection would look like and where the applicant's kind of contribution ends and where I guess the county would need to pick up.
Yeah, well, just to answer the question, which might tee up for a later comment, I suspect, is that as proposed, that secondary green ribbon would end at the applicant's property line. On that, when you're on that side of the site, on the other side of the property line is county right of way with power lines above. As you go further down, that's actually folks' backyard. But there it's county right of way. On the other side of that is the Arlington Historical Society property.
And so to foreshadow some work with the applicant, we're going to continue to look at that connection, whether it's appropriate for the applicant to deliver it, whether it's appropriate for the county to deliver it, or it's appropriate for a semi-hybrid where the applicant ensures that it's designed appropriately and the county can go and deliver it. It's likely only a couple, I think it's probably 100 to 150 feet of connection from where they're stopping to where the existing asphalt on Lynn dead ends, which is also where the Hume stairs drop out at. But we'll have more information at the commission hearings for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Schick.
Sorry, I was researching another thing. So just I have a couple questions. One, so I noticed in both the applicant and the staff presentation for community benefits, we talk about providing significant funds for burying power lines around N1 and Land Bay S and near C1. So is that just a contribution to the fund, or does that mean those power lines will be buried as part of this project?
I might let the applicant answer in terms of what's going to be undergrounded specifically, but generally speaking, everything abutting the site and around the site needs to be undergrounded as just a baseline of doing a site plan. In addition to that, there's also a monetary contribution to the utility fund as well. Two separate things.
Two separate things.
Yes.
Okay.
But we are not asking for the aerial utilities in the old Lynn Street right-of-way to be undergrounded.
So on the edge of the property with the green ribbon, that stuff's not going underground?
With the secondary green ribbon connection at Lynn Street.
Are you talking about the Hume stairs or a different part?
I'm just looking at the map here, and it's all along the north, technically west part of the property, and there's power lines all along the whole
Yeah,
stretch there.
there's along the eastern edge of Lynn.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty consistently from all of Lynn, there are aerial power utilities, yes.
Yes, and so those will not be buried?
Those are, the applicant has not included those as being buried, and we have not advanced that. One of the things that normally would help facilitate that is whatever development type that is going on adjacent to that. We also are not seeing, streetscape, building entries, other garage entries, other things on Lynn Street associated with the development that are.
Well, just feet away, there's extensive pathways being built for the green ribbon. So there is development happening very close to it. I'm just making that point, but I appreciate the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And my second question is, I noticed in both the staff and the applicant's presentations this evening, we're still seeing kind of like these ghost buildings and two things that are not up for approval. What is actually going in front of the board to be approved?
Yeah, when the board takes action on this, there'll be a couple different things. There'll be a rezoning for small portions of the site that are currently zoned CO 2.5. They'll all be RA 615 moving forward. There'll be a PDSP. So that's for the overall site itself. And then there will be 4 final site plans. And so one final site plan for N1, one final site plan for C1, one for the townhouses, and then one for those existing buildings that are there today to remain.
But I think your question is, what does that mean for me? Really? Yeah. And so the PDSP will identify the development count that can be built and the height and general locations of buildings across the entire site plan. Each individual final site plan, of which there are 3 really being built, those will define the actual shape of the building, the final height, any of its improvements, streets, sidewalks, garage entries, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the PDSP level, it's much more of a high level. And when a final site plan comes in 2030 for something else, the board would look at the PDSP and the sector plan and say, is the final site plan that's being proposed generally consistent or appropriate, and use that as part of its guidance for future approvals.
So there's a PDSP that would be generated as part of the rezoning that will include the other buildings that are not being discussed in this SPRC process, right?
Right. The rezoning is separate from the PDSP. The PDSP is covering the entire 36 acres. Mm-hmm. And it's setting like Rob said, it's setting the framework for the general placement of the buildings, the maximum height, the maximum development potential, sort of teeing up how the community benefits would come with each of these phases as they come in. And setting also importantly, the public spaces, right? So the placement of the buildings was something we spent a lot of time talking about at LRPC and at SPRC, right? So that what Rob is saying is like 2030, say you get a final site plan in for the C3 building, we should generally know where the footprint of that building is going to be in order to allow for the full creation of that 1 acre green ribbon space between C2 and C3.
It also, while it sets the framework, the county board and the projects that come before it can be whatever those are at that point. The board can consider it based on its own judgment what that means, and that could be more or less than what we see today.
Thanks.
Ms. D.
Just a couple of quick questions. You actually had the slide up that I was going to ask about, the one with the purple, green, and pink on it. While you get that, there's like numbers on it in intersections that with like some of them are red, green, and yellow. Some are just numbers. What are those?
Chris, that's your slide. The zones.
Yeah, 17 and 19.
Yeah.
17 for the PDSP.
Yeah, like what are the numbers inside the gray circles?
Oh, the intersection numbers. I'm sorry. Those are the intersection keys because we have lots of other numbers in the MMTA and wanted to be able to refer to the intersection.
So that's just like intersection number 17.
That's correct. And the red, yellow, green just
Is
indicates
light.
the signal there.
Okay.
Mr. Fornash, can you just get your
microphone on? Sorry.
I'm sorry for that too.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't explain that. And just for the record, for those online, the gray numbers are intersection numbers keyed to more data in the report, and the red, yellow, green are the ones that are signalized.
Okay, thank you. And then, so I don't know where else to bring this up. I've wanted to for a long time, but we haven't really talked. You keep saying that utilities are going to be handled by the applicant and stuff like that. But what about public services? And specifically, what concerns me is fire. We have one fire station. It already serves a very large area. When asked Takis about it, he's like, "Oh, we're building another station at the west end of Columbia Pike." I'm like, I don't know how that's going to affect us in South Arlington, but is there a plan in place, and how do you anticipate handling the increased business, so to speak, for that fire station?
Yeah, I'll start just by saying that the fire marshal is part of our review. So the fire marshal is reviewing these plans, is making sure that there's appropriate fire access for all the buildings themselves. As it relates to capacity, they're also considering that. Obviously, that's something that we would be considering way outside of the scope of just this redevelopment proposal. But just to answer your question broadly, the fire marshal is cued into what's happening here and is part of the actual review cycle. And then Rob, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't care about like fire exits and stuff. I know that that's all part of the process. I'm talking about like service calls for the one station that is going to have, triple the density.
Okay. So at the sort of county level of planning, the county has a fire coverage plan, and that includes both existing and future stations, and that accounts for the development of our plans. As Takis probably mentioned, there are plans for reworking fire stations on Columbia Pike, effectively adding more coverage. That allows providing more coverage. And I'm not the fire guy, but I can give you what I know. But that'll provide more coverage to those zones so that the very taxed, very busy fire station on 15th today is not getting calls from as far away for as big of a service area as they are. That doesn't get you a fire station with this PDSP, but the county is planning that. It is part of our facilities planning process.
Thank you. One more quick question, and I don't really, it may not be a clarification question, but so one thing that occurs to me is parking for the employees of the clinic, because the VHC clinic is going to be a fairly large facility, and you talk about 32 spaces overall, and then like a couple, and I think you could have 30 employees that could be trying to take all of those spaces. So is that something that it's a minor detail, but that will potentially upset the balance of parking in that area and cause a problem?
I'll say that I think the amount of parking dedicated to the proposed clinic use was based on expected number of employees at a clinic and in consultation, I'm guessing, with the proposed users. So I think that's been taken into account, but I understand the concern.
Sorry, the 32 spaces that you're listing for, and the retail is mostly the clinic, right?
Right. That's right.
Includes what you would need for the staff at any given time.
Includes staff and
Okay.
visitors/users. Yeah.
Okay.
And did I hear you say that number is developed in consultation with the
I'm seeing head shaking, so I might have
Okay.
said something incorrect.
No, that's based on the ratios.
Based
set
on
forth
ratios,
in the
okay.
zoning ordinance.
Okay.
That's what.
For that,
And
for that specific.
for that use, right? And
For that
and
use.
should also mention that, germane to the point we made earlier, that this isn't the end of the discussion or the road. There are parking management plans and a significant other sets of plans that are reviewed and approved by the county before anything is built to ensure proper operation of the garage.
Okay, well, for what it's worth, if somebody could put that in your brains, because I have a feeling that's going to be a problem. I could just totally see all spaces taken up by staff, and then, I just see that being a problem. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Strainer.
Okay, so first of all, I agree with the concerns with utility undergrounding on Joyce.
Commissioner
especially with
Strainer,
all the
we're not
trees.
agreeing with concerns yet.
I already agreed with it anyway. So my question is on affordable housing as it relates to community benefits. At what stage in the discussion are we at an on-site affordable units? Do we have a count, a percentage?
We are
breakdown
still in
of
the
the
discussion
unit?
stage,
Discussion.
which is why we didn't present on it, right?
Sure.
We would certainly have put it up there, but no, we're continuing to meet and talk with staff about that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would the only percentage that I would throw out there is, again, the target is at least 10% of net new units as caps. Yeah.
And then the focus on family size units, which is what we like generally. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adam, I have a big picture question, and I'm happy with a big picture answer. On pages 50 and 51 of the staff report, you list a fairly lengthy list of zoning and policy deviations that are under discussion. And I'm just wondering if that list is still basically accurate.
It is not, and I apologize if that part was unclear. We kept all the information in there as legacy information, so folks go back and see how the project had evolved over time, but it's not accurate
That's what I
anymore.
wanted to know. Thank you.
I am going to just go down the list as I have it. So we'll start with Commissioner Lantelmi. And Commissioner Lantelmi, if you're not available, we'll go to Ms. Van
Yeah,
Hine.
no, I'm still here. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Ms. Van Hine and Mr. Jacoby, you're on deck.
Hi, you can hear me? Okay. I have 4 real quick clarifying questions. The first one is about the estimated trip general data. For every type of housing, it's the same multi-level split, no matter what type of housing you're in or where you're in on the RiverHouse reservation. It's 9% bike peds, 64% transit, 27% vehicular driving, and I find that a little odd. That's my first question. My second question is the traffic impact study was the morning rush hour. Is there any consideration of doing an afternoon rush hour, which may be a bit more interesting? My third question is, I see these beautiful stairs in the designs. Do they all have railings? And that would be really nice to have. And my final question is about when is the earliest that you might be able to move Little Joyce? It sounds like it would be way down in the review process. We need to be, it can't be done now. You have to have other parts of the proposal in there. Is that correct? And that's it. Thank you.
So the MMTA does include PM peak analysis, so that has been accounted for. And then as far as the general mode splits, there are some things that we just, this is a tool to estimate what's going to happen on the roadway network. It is not, well, like I said before, it's not every little vehicle. We're dealing with big numbers. We feel that these estimates are appropriate for that type of analysis.
And then Pam, I apologize, I forgot the last question. Railings. Oh no, that wasn't the last question. I'll let
2 questions.
Little Joyce timing,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, specifically, is it my big question?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll answer the timing question first, which is currently the proposal is for the realignment to occur with the first of either the C2 building or the C3 building to come in for a final site plan. So that's
Okay.
what's proposed. I think we take your comment back into consideration there, and we'll be continuing to think about the timing and the delivery of that as we progress towards commission and county board hearings. But currently the draft phasing plan would suggest that that would occur again with either the C2 or the C3 building, whichever occurs first. And then Belle, I guess, or whoever, I can let you answer the railing question.
Yes, thank you. All stairs will have railings in accordance with the ADA guidelines.
Oh, wonderful. I didn't see them explicitly in the diagrams, and I can certainly use some stairs if I have a railing, but I can't use any stairs if there's no railing. So thank you very much.
Mr. Jacoby and then Commissioner Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. The first is concerning the staff presentation on RPP. There's a diagram that showed the RPP adjacent to the site. I want to point out that the residential parking program in our neighborhood is only valid from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So how will either residents or guests in the evening or overnight, how will that parking be controlled since the RPP won't cover it?
So the county doesn't have a process to preemptively adjust those timings. Those timings are based on what RPP was initially planned for, which was to address commuter parking. And as we have had a sort of evolution of the RPP process, we're also dealing with the idea of site plan projects that may have overflow or other non-neighborhood. We have a process in the RPP to address that, and we would have to do studies and change those times based on observed utilization of the parking.
And can we get those studies done fairly quickly to ensure that the situation doesn't degrade too much?
Staff is generally responsive to answering RPP requests. We do not do studies year over year over year. So I think there's a 2-year moratorium between each study. So I would just say, plan ahead on how you want to do that, because if you ask for it and it's not justified, then it's not justified for at least 2 more years.
Yeah, my fear is that you're dumping this on the neighborhood and making this a neighborhood problem to solve when it's something that should be solved by the staff and the applicant in advance.
Mr. Jacoby, did you have a second question?
Yes. My second question is about the PDSP. The PDSP is kind of getting a free ride in this process. So my question is, what happens, say 10 or 15 years from now, when JBG Smith or a successor applicant comes in with a PDSP, with a 4.1 application that is more in line with the initial proposal? Are they still bound to build out all of the community benefits that have been discussed, or would those then be reopened for negotiation? Thanks.
Yeah, broadly speaking, staff would be still looking to implement the sector plan recommendations and the community benefits identified in the sector plan, even if the proposed density is coming in at less than what's being shown in the PDSP today.
Thanks. That's all I have for now.
Sure.
Commissioner Haynes.
I'll pass. My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to comments. For those watching the time, we're obviously, again, going to run a little bit late. My apologies for that. That is on me as the manager of the gavel. But I hope that people will indulge us by staying around. I understand we have 6 or 7 commenters, so that's not going to take as long as public comment has taken in some settings. So I don't think we'll go as late over. But to those at the table, please be mindful of your colleagues and neighbors in wrapping up your remarks. And with that, I'm going to go to Mr. Reb, and we'll go around counterclockwise again.
Okay, so my comment is, as it relates to this project, it's about the Manhattanization of Arlington Ridge as opposed to preserving it as a livable area for residents. RiverHouse has represented a unique opportunity for more than 50 years. K-Fritz was very clever and used a loophole in the zoning code to condense all of the density he had in RiverHouse in 3 towers with a lot of open space in between, part of it grass, part of it parking lots. And the question has always been, what do we do with that? In developing RiverHouse further, there's the question of the trade-off of new open space for more buildings. If you look at the Pentagon City Mall that K-Fritz also did, he gave us Virginia Highlands Park as part of that. I think that is a jewel in this neighborhood. We all love it. Here we're talking about tripling one of the largest housing complexes in the DC area. And as I see it, the net increase in public space is only the James Park, which quite honestly is along 395. And second is the open space area in front of the Pentagon Row Plaza. In my judgment, that's not enough. I don't count the Joyce Hopper Park because that is public space today. If you look legally, that has been implied dedication by RiverHouse granting public access to that space, inviting public access and not contesting it. And secondly, the walkways today are also public spaces, and they're in fact more green than the green ribbon that is proposed. So I'm saying just the James Park and the open space in front of Pentagon Row Plaza is not enough new parkland for this. In fact, the original proposition of this development was we were going to convert wasteful surface parking into needed housing, but that's not where this has ended up. The impervious land on the site is going up by some 30%. That's been in filings earlier. This is about densifying the area. Second comment, traffic. We're talking about a 3 times increase in housing and only a 30% increase in vehicle trips. I find that to be challenging to accept. Third, the SPRC and community benefits consistent with some of the other comments. What if phases 2, 3, 4, and 5 are not built? The rumors are that the landowner is not interested in building 22-story buildings here because the market doesn't it won't accept it. So why not get the benefits now for the rights which the county is granting, which you are granting rights. So in fact, Joyce Hopper Park, when you're counting that as a benefit, RiverHouse has been paying for the upkeep of that. Now you're taking it and you're going to have to pay for it. So anyway, I think all the community benefits should be granted up front associated with approval of this PDSP.
Thank you, Mr. Reb. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I am generally supportive of the PDSP and the 4.1. I've watched 3 attempts to try to get infill development done. And I would really like to see this go forward. I think the density in housing is appropriate here. The ability to walk to a grocery store, the metro station, this is the right place to increase density, and it can be done for people who can choose not to live with a car. I really think that the sidewalk along Joyce, the improvements there, the bike lanes don't do much for me because I'm not a bike rider, but that 10-foot sidewalk all along Joyce Street, that's big. That is a really nice community amenity. It'll be a much nicer place to walk as a pedestrian. So I look forward to that being delivered in the 4.1. I do share some of the concern about the build out of the space of the N1 public space across from Pentagon Row. I am worried that if business conditions don't permit JBG to move forward with the other N1 building, it could be a long time before we get the full space there. But that's just where we are, and it's a risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Cassell.
Hi. Overall, I'm very positive about this. I think it has a lot of advantages. Certainly getting rid of all the surface parking is a positive. My main concerns are two. One is the green ribbon is really implemented in a unique and stylish way that makes it in a real community benefit versus it's just a sidewalk that eventually gets subsumed into the rest of the sidewalks. There's a concern that, the green ribbon really is unique and identifiably a pathway. But I think that the pathways have been shown to be incredibly important, and walkways and just really, really critical in getting people to use them and to get away from other types of transportation. The second one is I do take up on the fire issue. We had a fire official at our meeting last year, and there was no plan. And they said they were going to develop one, and I haven't seen one. So for a long-term fire, coverage and things like that, I'm very concerned that the county is kind of behind the 8 ball on that one. So those are my two concerns. But overall, I think it's I'm positive on the whole project.
Thank you, Commissioner Hossain.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to echo the same kind of sentiment. I'm really supportive of the project. I think you guys have put in a lot of really good work. Definitely the right place to have that increase of density. And I'm really happy to see that, especially the fact that you guys have that pedestrian-oriented development focus. I think that's super valuable in this kind of place. So I appreciate all the emphasis on all the different elements that you guys are putting into the pedestrian infrastructure, green ribbon, larger sidewalks, et cetera. And then the last thing is I'm always happy to see a low parking ratio. This is a dense urban area, and so these 0.4 parking ratios make a lot of sense to me. So happy with what you guys are doing so far. And oh wait, no, just kidding. I did have a procedural question, but I guess I'll just save that for an email. So just kidding. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you. I think, I would agree with many of the comments that it's hard to argue with new housing and park space on underutilized parking lots. And I think especially if we can figure out how to create parking for these new residents who will be coming to our communities. I appreciate how the county described the way that they are looking at community benefits. I thought that was very informative, but I would like to align myself with the comments of Richard and to some degree Jeffrey, in that I would appreciate, and I think the community would value highly getting those parks sooner. I am concerned as we move forward, if these other future buildings aren't built, that we aren't going to benefit from much of this green space that we are interested. I also support the continued conversations with the applicant on the benefits in that area by the Hume School. This is a huge connection that our community uses, and I think it would allow us to access the green ribbon as well as all of the retail and hospital site. I also regarding the traffic, would like to kindly request that you reassess the Kent Street connection. I realize that there is an exit right now from a parking lot. It is not an easy one to see. Once that is actual thoroughfare, I think you're going to see a lot more cars through there. And I think that especially as you try to push cars away from some of those other main thoroughfares, they are going to take the path of least resistance, as all traffic does. And that could be incredibly dangerous to our community members, many of whom are children that walk that way to school and home from school. And so I want to be cognizant of that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that and that we shouldn't build housing in this area. I'm just saying that we need to comprehensively consider that roadway, again, where there are not sidewalks, and we don't have four-way stop signs. So I think it's really important to reassess that area so that we can protect the most vulnerable members of our population. And I also heard Jeffrey bring it up earlier. I just did want to, again, agree with his comments before regarding the vehicles turning into that Harris Teeter shopping. I think that sounds like you may have considered that. That area does get backed up and that could cause major transportation concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Schick.
Thank you. So just reiterating from before, I am very concerned that we are not burying all the power lines on Lynn Street. It sounds like we might be splitting hairs here a bit, and I'd love to be in touch with whoever does make that decision so we can have a conversation about it, because it's very critical to my neighborhood. Secondly, the Kent Street, which will become a thoroughfare. Just looking at this, I confirm that's a two-way street. You are going to see Google Maps and Apple Maps routing people through there. It absolutely will happen. Go off to Lynn, take a left, boom, you're right on 395. So I would really strongly suggest that we double check everything around that, because we already have problems with this in the area with people zipping around and backups and unsafe driving, trying to get to 395. So please take a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D.
I agree with the statements that Richard and Jeffrey and Kateri and Godwin have all made, just in terms of the concern about Richard's comments about getting the community benefits. I really hope those other buildings are never built. I'm sure they will be, and that's a fight for another time. But having those benefits now would be beneficial to the community. I have concerns as well about the Kent Street. I think that will become much more of a thoroughfare. It's kind of hidden now. It's hard to find. I mean, I didn't use it for many, many years because I was like, could never remember like how to access it from the parking lot side. But as soon as that's a clear right of way, it will be used. I also, I concur with Godman on burying the power lines. When I first moved to the neighborhood 20 years ago, we used to have so many power outages, and I don't remember what shifted. I don't know if they put in better transformers or something. It did get better, but we're still at very high risk for that because of all the power lines that are right there. And then lastly, I'm really concerned about the construction hours, and I don't know where this fits in the conversation, but I don't think that construction should be allowed on holidays. I'm concerned about the length of time, the 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. We're looking at like 5 years of construction ahead of us. And I just am really concerned about allowing them to start to have such long hours and to be, I mean, we need a break sometime, right? Sundays, holidays. I don't know how to address that or where to, like, I just really hope that you don't, that doesn't happen.
I'll just respond to that quickly and just say we'll take that back for consideration. It's unlikely that we're going to agree to change those because those relate to other chapters of the county code into the statewide building code and allowing the developer to complete their construction in a timely fashion. Obviously, as you know, as you curtail the construction hours, you curtail or you increase rather the overall length of time it takes to do construction. But I just wanted to say that it's noted, and we hear it, and we'll take it back. I understood.
Commissioner Strader.
So I want to get back at the utility question. I agree with the Lynn Street in particular, especially because of all those trees surrounding the power lines. With the increased storms and all that we're seeing right now, I think that that's a very legitimate issue, not only for, not just for one in particular neighborhood, but those lines serve several different developments. And I'm curious why, I don't know if this is for the developer or staff, why the undergrounding of those particular power lines were not considered for this site, even though it immediately abuts the site and, as you pointed out, would have impact on the site.
Thank you, Commissioner Strader. Commissioner Robertson.
Well, that was a question.
My apologies.
Yeah.
I was asking Mr. Watson a question, so I don't think he heard your question.
Yeah, my question is, why were they not considered, those undergrounding those power lines?
We'll go back and look at this to get you a more clear answer. I think it's very important to understand that a lot of times this is associated with frontages being improved. And so the Lynn Street frontages largely are being untouched. that's what the project has put forward. We'll consider what you've got to say. I hate to do this, but I have to say, Dominion is your utility provider. And they do not step up to the table to do this. So we are expecting the county and private development to do all of this. So I just want to help us put some context on that problem.
Commissioner Robertson.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
We'll go to Commissioner Lantelmi.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually quite gratified that after all these meetings, we've actually had a number of changes that have been improved this project substantially. And I'm happy that we split it up so we're not looking at the entire site, but just these particular land bays. More to come, but we're doing what we can right now rather than the whole thing. Density is appropriate here. Having worked on the Pentagon City Sector Plan, this is clearly within what was envisioned back then, and that wasn't that long ago. We looked at all the aspects of Pentagon City, and all the issues raised here tonight were looked at that point, and this project does fit within the parameters that were set out by the Pentagon City Sector Plan. So I'm just gratified to see that we're moving ahead with implementing that plan. And I think this project, this portion of the larger project does fit well within what we envisioned just a few short years ago when that Pentagon City Plan was enacted. Thank you.
Ms. Van Hine.
Hi, thank you very much. This is a wonderful project. I'm very impressed with how well staff and JBG Smiths have worked together to make all these improvements, and we really have made major improvements in the project in the last few months. My main concern remains the delay in moving Little Joyce Street. And if my understanding is clear that we have to wait until C3 and C2 are there. That could be years. It may never happen. Meanwhile, we have a very dangerous intersection of Joyce and 15th Street because the southbound traffic doesn't stop. The east and westbound traffic doesn't stop. I have been almost hit so many times crossing there. We've been almost hit several times in our car trying to merge. Please, if it's going to be years before you can move Little Joyce, work very hard on fixing this intersection. You should be able to just put some stop signs in or something. But it is dangerous, and it is, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most dangerous intersections in our neighborhood. Thank you so much. Great meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Van Hine. Mr. Jacoby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I want to support my neighbors, especially Ms. Van Hine's comments about Joyce Street, and as always, Mr. Reb's eloquent comments. I also want to support the undergrounding of the power lines. While they may not be the front entrance of the RiverHouse project, it would be a community benefit because there are a lot of people who look down on that Lynn Street utility corridor, and it would really improve. It would be some benefit for those people who are otherwise going to be looking at 5 years of construction. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jacoby. Commissioner Haynes.
Yeah, thank you. I want to associate myself with Commissioner Lantelmi's comments. I agree that it's nice to see the plan at least somewhat in conformity to the work that had been done on the Pentagon City Plan. And also the getting the connectivity on the green ribbon was a huge plus. And so I think we really do need to focus on the quality of the green ribbon to make sure that it really is what had intended and what was envisioned in the Pentagon City Plan. Also want to second the comments about Hume School, making sure that connection is made however it's done, because I think that will be an important pedestrian way as well. And then I would also agree with the comments on bringing in the community benefits, especially the additional green space earlier rather than later, just because we are adding quite a bit of density. And for the benefit of the residents that are coming in, that would make a big difference as well. But thanks, I appreciate all the work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Haynes. Have I skipped anyone at the table, so to speak? Just want to confirm. All right, we will do our public speakers. I understand that we have 6 online and 1 in person. I would like to do our online speakers first, then in person, and then just a couple of hopefully very, very brief concluding comments.
Our first speaker is John Steele.
Yes, thank you. And again, John Steele here. I'm a resident of 16th Street South, and I do not oppose the end result of the project. My concern, and this goes to you, Adam, and to the developer, is working with you to make sure that our neighborhood and the concerns of other neighborhoods are heard. Our neighborhood is 80 years old, and we have lived by and large in peace with RiverHouse, which is 60 years old. So Adam, to you and to the developer, what is your timeline, please, to pull in the associations? I'd look forward to your answer now, if you can give it to me, please.
Yeah, I'll just say that once the project is adopted by the county board, or if it is adopted by the county board, and then the developer goes in for permitting, again, they would be needing to be in touch with you with the timeline and that community liaison as soon as they're going in to get those initial building permits. They may be able to offer that information up to you sooner, but I'll leave that up to them.
Okay, so do I stay in touch with you, Adam? I'm trying not to be a day late, so to speak.
I am happy for you to stay in touch with me. I will probably end up putting you in touch with folks in our zoning division who will oversee this as it goes into construction. But again, I'm always happy to be there as the liaison to get you in touch with the right person.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that offer. I'll take you up on it. Thank you, Adam, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
I'm going to take the opportunity before we go to Ms. Rob to make a point that I learned relatively late into my first term on the commission, which is that we are only talking about the entitlement here. We're only talking about the right under zoning and various land use ordinances and policies to build the thing, right? We are not talking about the permits that are needed to actually bring in the trucks, to start moving the dirt, to start building the thing. And so when you hear talk about how there'll be continuing conversations, that's because there are just a whole lot of permits that have to get acquired that can only be acquired after, there's an entitlement to build on the land. And I'm only saying that because it took me, maybe for my own sins, too long to realize that. We'll go to Ms. Ropp. Thank you. Ms. Ropp, we'll come back to you. Mr. McCullough.
Unmute me. Hello?
You're unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
Ms.
This is
Ropp.
Gail Ropp. Hello?
We
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can
The
hear
floor
you.
is yours.
All right, thank you. I am concerned, what do you consider affordable housing in this area? Because I'm finding no answers on this. I don't see that it stays affordable for any length of time. Someone will buy more than one property, then resell for a much higher price. So I'm really concerned about what you call affordable housing. Answer.
Ms. Ropp, and for others, typically during public comment, we don't do question and answer. We've already gone away from that a little bit, but what I want to say, Ms. Ropp, is that is a term of art, and I want to invite you to connect with Mr. Watson, awatson@arlingtonva.us, awatson@arlingtonva.us, and he will give you not just the very technical answer, but any other, any follow-up questions that you might have. With that, we're going to go to Mr. McCullough.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Charles McCullough, and I live at the Cavendish condominiums. That's directly next to the RiverHouse site at the Arlington Ridge and Lynn Street Y intersection. I've submitted a more detailed letter on behalf of my neighbors for the record, but I'd like to briefly share a few key points tonight. First, I want to thank the SPRC and others for your work on advancing design of the Green Ribbon Open Space in Land Bay Inn. My neighbors and I are excited about the possibilities of this green space. However, we're concerned that the proposed design overlooks something very basic: how people actually move through this area every day. There's a long-standing straight line pedestrian route, a staircase from Lynn to Joy Street that dozens of residents use to reach Pentagon Row, West Post, the Metro, the mall. In fact, the existing stairs were built in response to an informal desire path that emerged around the year 2000, right after the Pentagon Row site was opened. In other words, the community has already told us with their feet where the natural route is and that it should be a direct route. Studies have shown that when planners don't align paths with actual human behavior, people create their own. Pedestrians consistently choose routes that minimize effort and distance, even cutting through landscaping endangers to do so. So, Land Bay Inn's interim zigzag bank teller style path and the additional curving path features of the final design both ignore providing a straight line, stair, and path option. Rather than funneling people safely along a natural straight line route, the interim and final design using bank teller style will likely encourage the creation of an informal desire path down the adjacent steep hill slope or through a parking lot to avoid the zigzag ramp area near the end of these proposals. We're simply asking that the interim and final Land Bay Inn Green Ribbon continue to respect the need for and maintain an existing direct line staircase and slope approach. It may be the difference between this re-envisioned green space being admired from a distance and one that's not actually used as it's envisioned. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. We'll go to Ms. Weiser, my apologies.
Weiser, yes, thank you. I agree with a number of the comments that have been made regarding accelerating the community benefits, concerns regarding work on Sundays and holidays, the utilities being placed underground along Lynn Street, and the comments regarding Kent Street. With respect to Kent Street, another thing to note is that for someone who is driving from the Ridge, either Lynn or Arlington Ridge Road, down Arlington Ridge during the morning rush hour, with the many cars turning onto 395 ramp there, you have to wait a very long time. And that will be something that it will be very attractive to people to instead go on Kent Street and avoid that and in order to travel down in that direction. I'd also like to note that I'm very concerned about the metro, and that is something that when I was commuting, I've often found that the Pentagon City Metro platforms, which are very narrow, were really dangerously crowded. And I don't know that that is something that has been taken into account in trying to encourage further metro riding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiser. Mr. Frank.
Robin Frank.
Mr. Frank, we'll come back to you. Ms. Osgo. Ms. Frank, if so, my apologies. Ms. Frank, my apologies. If you're off mute, we'll start with you, Ms. Frank. Otherwise, we'll go to Ms. Osgo and then come back to you. Ms. Osgo? We're going to go to Ms. Boisseau, and if we see activity from Ms. Frank or Ms. Osgo, we will come back to them. Ms. Boisseau, we'll bring you a mic.
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. McCullough for making that point regarding the direct route for the Lynn to Joyce Street stairs. I see that needs to be a interim accommodation for persons that are able-bodied, in addition to the circuitous route for the those that are not able to transverse the stairs directly. The stairs provide a physical challenge as well as a very direct route. I would like to also address the primary green ribbon where it terminates at the 15th Street spur. It was briefed over that the connection from the point of that termination to Lynn Street is not a viable option. It's not recommended. And so my question is, what is the point of terminating the primary green ribbon at the bottom of this very steep street? It really needs to be revisited based on this very late conclusion by the applicant that the route to Lynn Street, actually to complete the primary green ribbon, is not a viable option. So, you know, we've been saying this from the very beginning, that this is not a good position, a good use of the primary green ribbon, and it's not an accessible route.
Thank you,
I
Ms. Loisel.
want to make sure that we also
Thank you, Ms.
address
Loisel. Your time has expired, but I do want to invite you also to reach out to Mr. Watson and Mr. Gibson for questions about the 15th Street connection. Do we have, and also with any other questions that you have as well, I regret that the time has expired. Do we have Ms. Frank or Ms. Osgo?
This is Rosamunda Osgo. Can you hear me?
Yes, and Ms. Frank will come to you next.
Okay, so my comments are the transportation study was done in 2023. Transportation has changed enormously in 2 years. Second comment, everyone loves Arlington for its walkability and bikeability, but they still use their cars. I've been a real estate agent for 30 years, and every single buyer and every single seller I deal with for 30 years has emphasized the need for parking because we are not a carless society. It's a hope, but it's not a reality, and the parking ratios in this plan are unrealistic. Third comment, Kent Street is a huge problem. It's narrow, it's a yield street, and I echo all the comments that said you are dumping it on the neighborhood. So I implore you to reassess the Kent Street connection. The parking on Kent Street between 16th and 19th Street is bumper to bumper every single night, overflowing from the RiverHouse parking lot. And Arlington does not enforce it. So it's a huge problem, and it's only going to get worse. So I'd like to see that addressed. You're dumping it on the neighborhood, and you're making a bad problem worse and endangering our children. Somebody said that the parking is zoned, but it doesn't mitigate anything, and I really want to emphasize that. I want to echo the comment. Oh, wait, I have a comment on the green ribbon. There's a big emphasis tonight on the green ribbon, but I feel that that is misleading because let's be clear, you're not adding walkability, not adding green space, you're adding density. There are many, many, many pedestrian paths right now, and the whole area is already connected. So I think that that's misleading. And I echo Charles McCullough's comment about having natural paths and not pushing people to one side or another. I want to echo the concerns about housing affordability. I think that the affordable housing is misleading. There will be no affordable housing on this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osgo. Ms. Frank.
Thank you, and I apologize for my technological incapabilities. 2 comments. One, I think that the transportation estimates and projections are troubling and inaccurate. And that's an area that really needs more work before going forward. And two, I wanted to associate myself with Mr. McCullough's remarks about needing to use the existing transportation pedestrian walkways rather than coming up with a green ribbon that doesn't make any sense in terms of the overall approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I am going to ask Mr. Watson to put a slide about timing back up because it's worth making sure everyone is on the same page about what happens after the SPRC process. So, Mr. Watson, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first thing I was going to say is for folks who have a question about affordable housing, what it is, how it's defined, how it's enforced. Emma put my email address into the chat, and it's also in this presentation. It's also on the staff report. So please email me and I'll get back to you. There will be affordable housing on the site. It's actually affordable housing on RiverHouse already. So I'm happy to answer more questions about that. Okay, in terms of our future public meetings, because I alluded to this earlier, we are now concluding the site plan review committee process, but before this goes to the county board, there will be a series of commission hearings as well, where these commissions will consider this overall project and all the items that come to the county board as action items. And so usually the first of those commissions is the Transportation Commission. And then the Planning Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Housing Commission. The exact timing of or sequence of how these commissions hear things is still yet to be determined. But the key takeaway is that we have some work to do, a lot of work to do, based on everything that we heard from folks here this evening, and that we've heard from you over the last 2 years since July 2023. To tie this all up, to work with JBG Smith to make sure that the plans for each of these records are fully revised. And once that's happened and staff has had a chance to receive those plans and go back through the 600 plan sheets that there are for us to review comprehensively, I'll be reaching back out to all of you to let you know that that's happened and that we are anticipating that this is going to go forward for a commission hearing in X month. Right now, if I had to take a guess, I would say probably November, but please stay tuned, and we'll reach out to everybody again who's part of this SPRC to let you know. And then of course we'd also love for you to spread the word with that too once we know what month we'll be going to commissions. We go to commission meetings and the county board meeting in the same month. One exception to that is that sometimes the Transportation Commission is actually the last Thursday of the month prior. That aside, it would all be happening the same month. So again, there'll be ample time for you all to know when this is coming forward. And like I said, these will all be action items at each of these commissions. So there'll be discussion, there'll be public comment before we get to the county board meeting. I think that ends my spiel, and thank you all again for sticking with us through all of this and all the hours and all the time that you all have devoted to making this a better project. It's come a very long way, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without you, and there's more work to do still. So again, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Thank you, everyone, for I'll go to Commissioner Striner.
Yeah, this one's about you, Daniel. This is, I want to let everybody know that this is Commissioner Weir's last meeting here as a planning commissioner. And on behalf of myself and all of the commission, we want to thank you for everything that you've done over the last 8 years, which is crazy. I've worked with Daniel for 2 years, and he's always brought the thoughtful, passionate energy to all of these projects that we've worked on together. And, I just want to say we really appreciate it. And, now you'll have more time on your weeknights while we're all still in here. So we really appreciate it, though.
Yeah, but thank you, everyone. I specifically I don't want to say invited, but indicated my strong willingness to, my term actually was originally set to expire at the end of April, and I indicated my strong willingness to be reappointed for a very brief time so that I could try to continue to work with this project specifically because of how important it is and how important that things get done right. So thank you all. And I anticipate that whenever it does come, at least to Planning Commission, that I'll be present as a guest, I guess, to give the SPRC chair's report. So I anticipate that I'll see at least some of you that evening. So thank you again. And unless there's anything else for the good of the order, we will be adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.